Welcome back to Face the Nation. I'm John Dickerson. Joining us now is former Attorney General Alberto Gonzales. He is out with a new book. It's called True Faith and Allegiance, a story of service and sacrifice in war and peace, about his life and time serving the George W. Bush administration. Welcome. I want to start with the scene where you were briefly the one administration official to be off in a secret location. Tell us first a little bit about that experience, and then you said it gave you a new appreciation for the presidency. How so?
Well, of course, every year one cabinet official is asked to stay away.
During the State of the Union.
During the State of the Union, in case there's a disaster and someone in the line of presidential succession is still alive to become President of the United States. In 2007, I was advised just days before the State of the Union that I would be that person. And so I spent that evening on an airplane flying around. And I remember thinking, watching President Bush give the address that evening, and I've advised President Bush through something like 50 federal and state executions, through 2 wars. So I've experienced a pretty big moments with him before. But sitting on that airplane, it suddenly hit me, oh my gosh, if something happened in Washington, would I and the people on that airplane be able to govern a wounded nation? President finishes his speech. We're ordered to head back to Andrews Air Force Base, and we land. And I really had an appreciation of the tremendous pressure and power. The opportunity to be President of the United States was really kind of special.
Yeah, well, we're in the middle of a campaign where people are imagining the candidates stepping into that role that you stepped into for 45 minutes or however long the speech was. You've said that it takes a special kind of person to be president.
Absolutely.
What do you mean by that?
Looking at the president make decisions about who should go on the Supreme Court, or the decision to send men and women into battle, I think it takes someone with a great deal of integrity. I think of very few jobs or vocations where integrity matters most. The American people want to know that the most powerful person in the world, is constrained by the Constitution and not use that office for personal or political gain. It takes someone with wisdom. No one is born with wisdom. It comes from experience. So I think wisdom is very, very important. It also takes someone with vision, a positive vision for America, someone who can say, come with me, I can take you to a better place. I think Americans want to believe in someone who believes in them. And so, and courage. The office is about decision making. I heard President Bush say this often, and you have to have the courage to make the tough decisions, because at the end of the day, that's what the American people expect, is you to make the right decision, to be bold and address the problems of this country. And
so you're a Republican. Does Donald Trump have those qualities you just outlined?
Well, I'm still evaluating
It's
Donald.
been 15 months. What's to evaluate?
Well, because he shifts positions from time to time, and I don't know Donald Trump. I don't think I've ever met Donald Trump. And so I think being able to know someone takes some time. And I know there are a lot of good people that I trust and know who are not supporting him. And what it tells me is that I need to study this man very, very closely. I don't think Americans should make a decision based upon the recommendation of anyone else. For example, if I today said, I don't support Donald Trump, or I do support Donald Trump, I wouldn't expect other Americans to follow my lead. I would expect them to do their own investigation, evaluation as to whether or not this is the right person for them and their families, and to lead this country.
Based on those criteria you outline and that you outline in the book, True Faith and Allegiance, let me ask you another thing you said about Donald Trump's comments about Mexico, because he went and made the trip this week. Donald Trump said, just to remind people, they bring drugs, they bring crime, they're rapists. In response to that, you said you can't unring that bell. What does that mean?
Well, I mean, there are consequences to the words of when a president makes a statement, and I talk about that in the book in terms of once the president makes a statement, it's very, very difficult to walk that back. And so I think someone in the Oval Office has to be very careful about the words they say, because there are consequences, and quite frankly, there should be consequences. When the president draws a red line in the sand and says, if you go beyond that, there will be consequences, there can be no doubt in the minds of our enemies that we intend to follow up, and that there will be consequences. So the words are very important from someone who sits in the Oval Office.
Let me ask you about an anecdote in the book that got a lot of attention at the time. It was March of 2004. John Ashcroft was the Attorney General.
Right.
You're counsel to the president. There's a scene in his hospital room where
Yes.
you're trying to get an extension for the warrantless wiretapping program.
Yes.
And there have been different stories told about this. Director Comey, now a director of the FBI, says that you and Andy Card were there to try and as he put it, take advantage of a very sick man.
Right.
You tell your version of the story of what
Yes.
happened in the hospital room trying to get that extension. How did it go as you saw it?
Well, you're right. I spent some time in the book talking about this, and I would just say that I testified under oath about what happened in that hospital room. And the Inspector General of the Department of Justice also spoke to me about what happened in that hospital room. And so I am on record, under oath, about what happened, and no one has contested my description of what happened. Listen, Andy Carter and I spoke 2 times before entering that hospital room about our concern that he might not be competent.
The Attorney General, John Ashcroft, who just had surgery.
Who had just had surgery. And if he wasn't competent, then we were not going to ask him to do anything. We were primarily there to report on a meeting we had just had with congressional leaders about this very same program and about the dispute, and the congressional leaders telling us we believe you should go forward with the program.
Continue the program.
Because it is so important in protecting American lives. And of course, the very next day we had the Madrid train bombings. It was a very dangerous time for our country, and we were trying to do what we could to ensure that we had the tools necessary to protect America.
In terms of the warrantless wiretapping and then also enhanced interrogation, which you oversaw as well.
I didn't oversee it.
But
okay,
you advised on it in your capacity with the president.
Well, I was counsel to the president, but the advice came from the Department of Justice, the senior leadership of the department, and the lawyers within the administration, saying, done a certain way, it would be effective and it would be lawful.
And I apologize, not an unimportant fact. But how do you feel looking back on both of those things? Both of those policies have been changed. Mm-hmm. In the Republican race right now, there are some, well, Donald Trump is saying, bring back waterboarding. It would be great. What do you feel about that?
I think we should only be doing those things that are absolutely necessary and effective and lawful. And the question—
Was that true of enhanced interrogation
Absolutely.
techniques?
That it was effective, and we've had testimony by folks from the CIA and the FBI talking about information that we got from the program. And at the time, the Department of Justice issued an opinion that if waterboarding, for example, was done with certain supervision, and it was only done to 3 people, high-level detainees, who we believed had information about a pending attack against the United States, that it would be lawful. And so this was, obviously very, very controversial. And I don't mean in this book to try to convince anyone who believes that waterboarding was torture, that it wasn't torture. I merely meant to point out that the lawyers worked very, very hard to get this right, to ensure that the CIA and the policymakers had the tools that they believed was necessary to protect this country.
But just very briefly, a parting question here. Your view now, if it were to come back, there's a legal pathway to bring waterboarding back, or is that closed?
Would I support it? I'd have to want to talk to the CIA folks to say, first of all, what is the threat? If in fact someone has information about a bomb that's about to go off in Washington D.C. in the next half hour, and we have someone in custody that we know has information about that. Even Chuck Schumer said in that kind of scenario, Senator Chuck Schumer from New York said, yes, he would authorize torture, assuming, again, I'm not suggesting that it would be torture as a legal matter, but that would be a tool that I think we should pursue under certain kind of circumstances.
All right, Alberto Gonzales, the book is True Faith and Allegiance. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John.
We'll be right back with our panel.